Everybody wants to make a website like Google, which is quite big. People want to replicate what Facebook did. People want to replicate what Instagram web version could do. So if you're aspiring to make your career in web development, in this video, we are going to discuss in detail what you're supposed to do and how you can actually make your career in web development. 2022 is actually an year where you can actually excel yourself as a web developer. Now, if you don't know anything about web development, in this video, we are going to discuss in detail how you can make your career in web development. Okay, first of all, let's understand one thing. Who is actually a web developer? Well, obviously, if you don't know, this is 2022 and I think you should know. If you're watching this video on your desktop, there is a good possibility that you're using YouTube as a website. When you want to find out something like, let's say if you want to apply for some jobs, you go to a certain URL and whatever page you see is a web page, and whoever makes that web page is a web developer. So in very short, a web developer is a person who makes the web page so that end user like you and me can interact with it. We can send our data, we can receive our data, and we can do the stuff which we are supposed to do. Okay, now let's discuss what kind of web developers are there actually. Well, in short terms, if I may, there are technically three types of web developer in the industry which are quite popular as a job also. Well, we have front-end developer, we have back-end developer, and we have full-stack developer. Well, if I have to sum up what these things are, front-end developer is someone who actually makes things which are visible for the user like you and me. If you're going to go to this YouTube video, you will see a subscribe button. If you're going to hit that subscribe button, obviously this channel is going to be subscribed. If you're going to hit on the thumbs up button, that is going to be liked. But the question is, who is doing what? So when you click on the subscribe button, when you click on the thumbs up button, that is the role of a front-end developer. He decides where should be a thumbs up button. He decides what is the color of a subscribe button. In back-end, they decide if the channel has 1000 subscribers. If someone has clicked on subscribe, now the channel should have +1, which is 1001 subscribers. So this is the role of a backend developer, where you do all the magic with your data as well as a programming language which sits inside a backend environment. Finally, we have someone who is known as a full stack developer. Who is a full stack developer? Full stack developer is a combination of a front-end developer plus backend developer. Now, I'm not going to go in detail what are the various roles and responsibilities of these developers, because obviously that is going to make a very big video. I'm going to make a separate videos on these, but in short terms, if I may, these are the three types of web developers we have in the industry, which are quite popular, and they have some high paying jobs as well. Okay, now let's talk about day-to-day activities as a web developer. Now, I'm not going to talk about specifically, okay, this is what you're supposed to do as a front-end developer, this is what you're supposed to do as a back-end developer. But I'm going to talk in general sense, because this video is specifically for someone who's trying to become a web developer. Well, first of all, obviously communicating with your management or client. This is something which is very important. It is something we also call as soft skill. Are you able to communicate your technical expertise to the person who has zero idea about what is HTML, what is CSS, what is JavaScript? Okay, so you have to understand that these set of skills are supposed to be communicated, if I may. You should be able to explain why the like button is supposed to be placed there, why it cannot be there. Secondly, you have to obviously design the website. So designing part includes the front end part of it, designing part includes the back end part of it. Then keeping the website alive, that is very important. If YouTube goes down, obviously you won't be able to consume this content. You probably will not be able to understand or learn a lot of things for free of cost. So you have to understand this. And finally, the most important of all, removing the bugs. So if you're going to build something, obviously that will include some mistakes which you have to remove. Obviously, this part also known as updating the website or keeping the website up to date. But yes, this is something which you have to learn and which you have to maintain as a web developer. Okay, now I'm going to discuss what are the advantages you are going to have when you actually choose your career as a web developer compared to choosing some different career. So right now we are going to discuss the advantages, and obviously we will discuss the disadvantages as well. The first thing first, which I am a personal fan of, if I may, like, because when I started my career, when I started learning web development, it was not very difficult for me. It was very, I would not say I was an expert in that, but what I would say, I was able to learn it very quickly. So the advantage with web development is that you can actually learn it in 6 months. Now, again, this is a general timeline, if I may. It may be a bit more for some people, it may be less for some people, depending upon their experience and their ability to learn new things. But in general, if you're an average person, if I may, it will hardly take you 6 months from today to actually excel in web development and actually make your career inside web development. The second advantage is obviously, which we were all waiting for, handsome salary. Now, if you talk about, you go to any job posting website, around 50% of those websites are going to list that we are hiring a web developer. It could be a full front-end developer, it could be a back-end developer, it could be a full-stack developer, but 50% of the websites, or I should say 50% of the job posting, are actually hiring for web developer. So the demand in the industry for proficient, or I should say efficient, or an expert web developers are very high. Now, since the supply is less, the salary actually becomes handsome, and you actually take a very good salary at your home while working with something you are actually passionate about. Okay, when I was a child, I was quite creative. I used to play with colors. I used to draw a lot of things. Spider-Man used to be my favorite character. But what I want to mention here is I could transfer my creative skills in the web development as a career as well. How? Well, with designing, or I should say with being creative, does not mean that you're designing something great. You're designing something which is very beautiful. You're making something more efficient as well. Now, how you can actually transfer your creativity? You can actually design websites which look actually quite beautiful, irrespective of what devices they are. You can, as a backend developer, you can make something which is actually working quite efficiently. A lot of people don't have to do something. Imagine if you're working at Google, don't you think this is a very creative work? When you type something on Google, it fetches millions and millions and probably billions of rows, and it gives you an answer within seconds, or I should say in less than a second. When you click on Instagram like, it is instantaneously happening. So how that is happening? Well, that is something I call it as creative work, where you are actually using your creativity and making the user experience quite better. The next advantage is a second biggest advantage after the handsome salary. It is working from bed. You can actually work from your bed as a web developer. Now, I don't mean literally, but what I want to say is that you're not limited to the location. You don't have to go daily to the office to actually do your work. Whatever happens, that happens from your laptop. If you're going to an office, that is just because you want to go to an office. But yes, you are not limited, and you can actually work from any location. Be it your bed, be it your home, be it your train, be it your grandmom's house. Anywhere you can work from there. So this is the second biggest advantage, of obviously after the handsome salary. The next point is obviously, like, let's say if you want to become an entrepreneur, you want to start your own startup, you don't want to actually work for someone. In that case, you can actually become your own boss as a freelancer or as a consulting agency, which we are doing obviously in our company. So what happens? You don't have to speak to anyone. You actually go to the clients, you say, okay, I have this solution for you, and you can start building the solution for them, and you can work for yourself, and you will make a handsome money as well. I'm not going to mention how much, because that depends upon project to project. But yes, the biggest advantage is that you can become your own boss. You don't need a special, I should say, degree for that. So you as a student can also start your side business, if I may, or as a freelancing as a career in your web development journey. The next thing, which is quite important, obviously, for anyone as an individual, when you're actually looking to upgrade your career. When I started my journey as a web developer, I started learning few things. And after that, when I learned them, I transitioned into system administration, then cloud, and now I'm learning blockchain and different stuff. But I don't have to relearn those things. I learned something in web development which I used to actually make my learning speed quite fast. So you have to understand, when you start learning web development, when you start becoming an expert in this field, or I should say when you start building your skill set in this particular domain, you can actually excel into multiple domains which are going to open multiple doors for you, and you can actually become, or I should say, you will be actually taking the corporate ladder at the top level. Every coin has two faces. So if you as a web developer have an advantage, you will also have a disadvantage. Now, I don't want to scare you, but I just want to make sure that you are aware what will be the disadvantages so that you are ready and you're not going to blame me that Avinash, you told me that I should become a web developer and that is why I've become a web developer. The first disadvantage, I would not say this is a disadvantage, but yes, if you are not into coding, well, in that case, you should stay away from this career because you won't be excelling into it. Because as a web developer, you have to code constantly. In front end, if I talk about, you have to use these technologies, if I may, or languages, if I may, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, obviously. In backend, you can say PHP is there, Python is there, Go is there, C# is there, Ruby is there. So I don't want to scare you, but what I want to mention is that there are so many languages, which obviously you don't have to learn all of them. If you want to become an efficient developer, you will be learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and obviously something from any one language from here. But this is coding. As a web developer, you cannot say it was not working for me, I was not able to code, because this is your job. So you have to have a coding knowledge, because without that, you won't be able to actually excel or even move forward in your career. Now, since the technology is moving at a rapid pace, a lot of companies are dependent on the tools which are built by the web developers. If I talk about myself, our company is using some internal tools. So what happens, like let's say if something does not work, irrespective of what I'm doing, I have to make sure that things are working there. I have to go there, I have to fix the bugs, and I have to make sure that things are working there. So there is a good possibility that you may have to be working in long hours. Now, this is going to be a specifically important point if you're thinking of becoming your own boss or as a freelancer, because yes, let's say if a client has an urgent requirement, you have to do that. Personally, I have done web development till 6 AM in the morning as well. So again, I don't want to scare you. This was something I was passionate about, and I'm still passionate about, but this is something you have to understand, like it can be as extensive as like this. If you feel like that you have learned these things and that is it, you don't have to learn anything, well, you are wrong and you will fall down and you will fall very bad, because as a web developer, you have to keep on learning things. I'll give you my personal example. When I started web development, I used to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That is it. Then I learned jQuery. Then I learned Angular. Then I learned React. So you can see I have to keep on constantly upgrading my skill set. If I talk about CSS, there are so many CSS. We have SCSS and different CSS. So you have to understand that these are the various tools and technology you have to learn. If I talk about backend, I started with PHP. Then I learned CodeIgniter. Then I learned Laravel. Now there is something known as Node.js. So you have to, I'm learning Express.js and various things. So you have to understand, if you're going to take a break, if you're going to stop learning, you will actually fall down very bad. And the worst disadvantage as a career in web development is, it is not for someone who is a people person like me. If you're an extrovert, if you like to meet with people, if you like to interact with people, in that case, this is not for you, because your life will be 6 to 8 hours in front of a laptop. You will have a hardly chance to meet new people. If you're working in office, that can be different, but let's say if you're working remotely, if you're working from bed, the only people you will be seeing are the people who are in your virtual meeting or the people of your family. So this can be one of the worst disadvantages if you're trying to become a web developer in 2022. So I hope all your doubts are now clear with this video. But I understand you must be having some questions. In that case, comment section is the right section for you. But if you need some guidance related to your career, which could not be answered in this video, obviously click on the link which is given in the description of this video, and someone from our team will make sure that your career doubt is clear.